We are officially ready. Okay, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Days with Davo. I'm your host, Davo, and this is a very special Days with Davo. This is my very first interview style podcast that I did. Normally, all the other ones, you just saw my pretty face talking to you. And I talked about some weird stuff. I talked about different conspiracies. We went into Mandela effect. Recently, we went into the Marilyn Monroe conspiracy, whether or not she actually committed suicide. I don't believe she did. If you haven't checked them out yet, check them out. They're all on uh, Spotify Days with Davo or YouTube Days with Davo or Rumble Days with Davo. It's real easy. Days with Davo all over the place. So check them out. All right. So without further ado, I have my Fueled by Jesus and caffeine cup, which is a little bit of a lie because it's decaf. I've officially gone into a place where during the week I'm doing green tea for my caffeine, been off coffee for a couple weeks now, and I do decaf on the weekends because I kind of like coffee. All right. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my very good friend Tim. Uh, I wanted Tim to be my very first guest. When I first launched Days with Davo, I did a video and Tim was the first one to comment on it and said that he would love to come get weird with me. So here we go. It's time to get weird with my good friend Tim. Tim, how are you?
Doing all right. I shaved for this.
I shaved my neck. That's as far as I went. That's awesome. Great to hear. All right, so a little bit about me and Tim. Me and Tim have been friends since high school. We worked at camp together, Camp Putnam in New Braintree. Fantastic organization. We'll probably dive into a few camp stories along the way, reminisce a little bit, and I don't know. I'll ask him some questions. What he thinks about different weird topics. So, Tim, why don't we start with a little bit of your upbringing, where you grew up, where you went to school, college, what you majored in, just, I don't know, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up about quarter mile that way from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Didn't think I'd end up back here, but here I am.
No one ever does.
And when we moved, when I was in seventh grade, we moved to OCAM, and I'm sure everyone listening knows where OCAM is. So,
three of them do.
so we went over there, and that's where I met you. We're at Quabbin, and then I went to UMass Amherst, where I met my lovely wife, and bounced mostly around the state. Never really lived outside of Massachusetts, and got a teaching certificate. I was going to be a teacher, couldn't get a job as a teacher. Couldn't get a job as a teacher, so I ended up as a construction project manager, as one does.
That's a little bit in the other direction.
It is. I'm in an industry where almost everyone around me has some sort of a civil or structural engineering degree, and I have a history degree.
That's funny. So you wanted to be a history teacher? That's what you wanted to go into?
That was the plan. Yeah, didn't work out, and it reaches a point where you're just like, oh, I guess this is what I do now. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
Cool. And I did teach for a little while. It was after college for a outdoor program for court affiliated youths, and they had to learn. They had a curriculum because they were there for 30 days, and if you miss 30 days of school, you get held back a year, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of rehabilitation. So, so they needed certified teachers to teach them. So I was teaching kids who didn't want to learn science around a campfire in the middle of the woods, and
we got it done. A cool concept, though.
It was pretty neat. It was a good program, and taught me a lot. It's kind of like it was like an extension of camp where we worked. All of a sudden, I had kids who were kind of like, if it didn't work out, and our positive influence on them didn't happen when they were younger. I got a chance to have a positive influence on them when they were in their teens, and much more willing to fight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that last part needs double lines, bold, italics, and exclamations.
Yep, but it was actually, what I liked about it was that the emphasis was on de-escalation.
Okay.
And as you know, I can talk my way out of pretty much anything.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. I've been in that
so
situation with you.
so it was not about restraints and things like
Mhm.
that where you hear about these stories on uh, juvenile corrections and things like that. It was about get them to calm themselves down, offer them space to feel their feelings, and then come back down, and we can sort out what the issue was after that,
That's pretty
without having
cool.
to resort to aggression of any kind. Because in the end, if you're restraining them, you're now the aggressor,
Yeah, right,
and
right, right, right,
that's
right.
that's not that's not really teaching them anything. It's teaching them that you're bigger than them. You're just going to pin them down. So
Yeah,
uh, that was the thought. I like that program, but then it was the early 2000s. Anyone could buy a house, so we bought a house, and I
yeah.
couldn't find a job, so construction it was, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
And the house that you bought in 2000, that's a house you're in now?
It is not. I actually lived
Okay.
in Chicopee for about 8-10 years, something like that, and then
Ooh, what was that like?
Chicopee was. So I tell you, the house was awesome.
Yeah,
It was a cool little bungalow type house.
yeah.
Actually, we looked it up. It was one of those Sears Craftsman houses you get from a catalog. So
Uh,
in 1909, you could order a house from a catalog, and they would bring it to you with all the pieces labeled, and you'd pay someone $1,000 to put your house together for you.
what?
Yeah, yeah. So you could go through and see the marks on the beams and stuff where
Hmm.
it's basically a kit, and you've got an instruction manual like an IKEA furniture, but it's a house that you live in, and you could either do it yourself or you could hire someone to put it together. And it was a really cool little house, and we liked it, but we had no yard, and it was a lot of neighbors around everywhere. It was kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah,
And once we had our daughter, we were like, I think we got to go somewhere where it's a
we're
little more
good. Yeah,
family friendly.
yeah. That's what I like about our house that we bought. We bought in 2019 in Munson, and we do have neighbors, but they're definitely not right on top of us. I've got like if you look from the bottom of my driveway, and I tell this everyone that is looking to buy a house, driveways are important. Our driveway is like this, and when your snowblower kind of shits out in the winter and you have to shovel the thing yourself, driveways are important. But I do like being up on the hill. I like being up. It's off of the road, and I can see my neighbor across the way if I look down my driveway, and then neighbors on right and left of me. I got one neighbor, and he's cool. He's all right. But he he's far enough away. He's not right on top of us either. We did cut down a few trees, so we got to see him a little more than we probably need to. But the other one you can't see at all, especially in the summertime when everything overgrows. It's pretty cool, secluded, and 3/4 of an acre. We love it.
Plus, I've been watching The Last of Us, so you've got a good defensible position there.
Exactly, dude. Because
And,
when shit goes sideways, I like to
yeah,
be the higher
you've
ground,
got
right?
you've got the high ground.
Exactly. Dad, how hard was that second episode?
There's a lot. My wife didn't know what was going to happen.
Uh huh.
We're not going to give any spoilers here, but
Yeah, no, we're not
um,
gonna. It's too new to actually go into. But
my daughter and I both knew what was coming, but I didn't realize it was going to happen
did you
in
play
the
the
second
video game?
episode. I did not. I didn't
I
have a
didn't either.
PlayStation, but I was
Yeah.
obsessed with the story of it. So
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
read all up on it and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah. My oldest boy, who just moved out, he's 26. He played it. And I remember going in his room a couple times as he was playing it, and hey, check this out. This is Last of Us. Check it out. And I kind of got sucked into the story a little bit, but I only played a little bit. But just from like pop culture and people saying, "Oh, be surprised what happens," and so I knew what was going to happen. But dude, I'll tell you. So it comes out on Sunday night. I watched it on Monday, and I had like sorrow in my soul, like all of Monday. Like I was
yep,
just like, I don't have a good feeling about this. This is bleak, but
yeah.
it was really well done, and it's funny that your wife watched it with you. Me and my wife watched the first season. She refuses to watch the second season because one, she knows what's going to happen, and two, she is of the side where it's like it's a little too real for me. Not so much the zombie part, but like if shit does go sideways, it's kind of scary. You know, like to see like
Yeah.
these encampments that come up and like not letting people in because you think they might be affected. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
it could definitely happen.
most zombie movies now, ever since, I mean, you know, Dawn of the Dead and all that's the
Yeah,
Night of the Living Dead. Those were the zombies were the antagonists.
yeah,
Nowadays, the narrative is different in that the zombies are there. And it was
yeah,
on Walking Dead too. The zombies are there. They're a
yeah,
thing you have to worry about, but the real issue is other people and how they're dealing with the same stuff you're dealing with.
yeah,
And that selfishness and the willingness to eradicate everyone around you,
yeah.
zombie or not, just to make sure
Right.
that you're okay,
Mm-hmm.
is it's a morality thing more than a horror situation.
I like to think back during COVID and the toilet paper debacle.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People went crazy, absolutely batshit crazy about toilet paper. And that's toilet paper, dude. That's not water. That's toilet paper.
Yeah, and it perpetuates itself. Like if everyone
Mm-hmm.
hoards, if the first people there hoard it, now
Yep.
there's a shortage. If everyone just took what
Exactly.
they needed, then we'd
Exactly.
probably be okay, and no
Mm-hmm.
one would have ever noticed. But
Yep.
everyone panics and buys. Same thing when there's a storm coming. Everyone goes and
Yep.
buys
Bread and
freaking
milk.
milk and
Mm-hmm.
bread and
Yep.
stuff. All
Exactly.
right, what are you gonna do? It's summertime. You got a hurricane coming. Are you gonna have milk go bad because you lost power?
Right. I don't get it. But all right, cool, man. Yeah. So you guys bought a house. Now, when you were in college, did you do you did crew, correct?
I did. Yep,
How was that?
it was awesome.
I was kind of would like to do that. It looks pretty freaking cool.
It was cool. It was well, tall enough where everyone always asked me if I was a basketball player, but because I was the younger spectrum of my class, I didn't
Hmm.
grow until after everyone else had pretty much grown. So I
Yeah.
missed the basketball boat. When I got to college, I was oh wait, there's a sport where I just have to be tall and
Yeah.
willing to subject myself to immense pain. And I was like, I can do both of those things.
Right. Yeah, that's funny.
And it's you watch it on the Olympics and you see like this very graceful rowing
Yeah.
event
Oh yeah.
going on. When you were in the boat, it is the opposite of that. It
Is
is
it?
oh, it's people grunting and swearing and like spitting. It's a mess because you can't breathe. You're rowing at 40 strokes a minute
Hmm.
for somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes, and it is exhausting. When you cross the line,
Yeah.
you just collapse. You kind of push it. But it was also one of those things where when you're in a boat with a bunch of other people, you're rowing in an 8 and you're like, well, I'm not going to let these other 7 people down. So it really
Exactly.
brings everyone together. Everyone wants to do as much as they can. And
Yep.
you find that everyone pulls harder when they're in a boat together than when you're just
Right.
kind of on the rowing machine by yourself, because then you're only,
Uh-huh.
hurting yourself if you stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Cool.
it was a fun sport, and it was also a good way to take UMass with, going from Quabbin where we had 1,000 kids to going to UMass where there's 25,000 kids.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden I have a group. I have a small group, and I still have two of my best friends in life right now are guys that I rode with at UMass. So
Oh no way.
yeah, I hung out with them a couple weeks ago, and it was like catching up, picked up right where we left off, and
Yeah.
we've all got families and stuff, so we don't see each other
Yep.
nearly as much as we'd like to, but
Sure.
we're still in communication with each other, and we have those things to talk about. But now we've got families and other stuff to talk about too.
Uh
So
huh. Yeah. Very cool. Um, what about you did rafting for a while, yes?
still do it.
You still do it.
I still do it on
Really?
occasion. Like
Yeah.
I'm on the I get an email with like, hey, we need help this day, this day, this day. When can you do it? So I'd probably do, 8 to 10 trips a year
Hmm.
down the river with guests, and it's fun. First one's usually a little bit of a reminder how out of shape I am, and then I get better as I go.
Right? That's funny.
It's a
Um,
blast, and we actually, they're the people that own that run the company that I work for. I've known them for 25 years. This is my 26th season there,
really?
and they're like family members basically. I actually officiated their oldest son's wedding,
Oh no way.
so yeah, it was pretty cool. It was quite an honor to do that, and
Yeah.
then everyone that went to the wedding got to go rafting. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was
That's
a,
on
a
my
real
bucket
cool wedding.
list. I want to officiate a wedding someday. It's definitely on the bucket list.
All you gotta do is pay the state $20 and you get a little thing for the day. Yep.
Oh, I'm definitely doing it then. That's money well spent. All right, let's get into a few weird topics. I think the listeners know a little bit about you. Actually, before we do that, so we met at Quabbin. One of my fondest memories I have, and I don't think kids will kind of like do this sort of stuff. I can remember going on random drives with you and Phil.
Arbitrary road driving.
Yes, arbitrary road driving. Exactly.
Arbitrary road driving.
And this was before GPS. And
to this day, I cannot get lost in this area.
Really?
Yeah, I know every road.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was like some serious fun. And it's like, I try to think of today's youth and some of the stuff that they do and how a lot of them are, more technologically advanced and they don't do anything without their phone or tablet or what have you, but to just like get in a car with a couple of your buddies and just take as many back roads as you can to try to get lost and find your way home, man, that's awesome. I loved it.
My nephew just got his license, and when I was taking him on a few drives, I said to him, I said, look, you got to sometimes you just got to turn the GPS off, drive around, see where you end up.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you get lost, you just plug in home and find your way back. But odds are you can find your way back.
Exactly.
And it was fun. And you know where arbitrary road driving came from? Is Phil and I didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
So we would go and try to get lost so that we could tell our parents we got lost without lying to them.
Hey man, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. They'd be like, all right, well, you gotta not do that next time. We'd be like, we got lost again.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. Those back roads are twisty, they're turning, and I don't know. Hey.
Yep.
2 days later.
That was fun.
Yeah. So let's dive into a little bit of our camp days. Now, you had started camp before I did. I got into camp. I remember being on a bus. I think we were doing track at the time. I don't know. Did you do track?
I did indoor track.
Yeah. No, this was
I golfed in the spring.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was spring summer season, and I was on the bus, and I believe Ashley was like, "Oh, you should work at camp," and I was like, "What's camp?" Like I had no idea, and so I got the contract, and then I signed it, and then I was a camp counselor first year, and that was it's very fun memories when I look back at camp, because you're with the same people for how long? At least 6-8 weeks, something like that. Pretty much your whole summer.
Yep.
Yeah. You're with the same people for 6 to 8 weeks, and then you go there for a week, you come home for like a day, and most of the time when you do come home that day before you start the next session is you're sleeping the whole time. Like you might as well like not even be part of your family because you got so little sleep at camp. You were sleeping the whole time until like Monday morning, and then you were coming back to do it. And the reason why you were so tired is because you're with these kids all day long, every second, every minute of the day. You're with them. You're doing fun things. You're trying. For those who don't know, Camp Putnam is a place in New Braintree where kids from like Worcester, Piedmont Street, like kind of tough areas of Worcester would come out, and so they could actually like see trees, and get the whole experience. They, swim in a pond. They eat in the mess hall. They do all sorts of like arts and crafts and stuff like that. And most of the counselors were, young kids from high school looking to make a little money and kind of like to work with kids, hopefully. But so you're with the kids constantly. And so the only time that you have to like really unwind is after they go to sleep. So you don't get any sleep yourself, maybe a couple hours a night, but for the most part, you're strung out. You're like, you look like a meth addict by the end of the session.
My time spent hanging on that porch.
Oh my God. Yeah. that one time where you were up on the railing and you didn't know that the citronella candle was underneath you, and the minute
Oh yeah,
you just like fell backwards.
it's a good thing it wasn't in. It was a good thing that was in Village 2, which has
Exactly, not Village
the
One, right?
lower porch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it was cool, and I like so the following year, we became head counselors because people move on after you know. Usually after your senior year, you move on and you go go to college and you do other things. But so we were still in high school, and then we became head counselors, and you had Village One, I had Village Two, and just like the sound systems that we would bring in and the music, just and it was so cool because you have like different genres of music that you really kind of got into. Like to this day, when I listen to Pink Floyd Pulse, like Shine On You Crazy Diamond, dude, that takes me to a different place. Not because it's
Yeah,
Pink Floyd and it's acid rock, but just like hanging out and like some of the conversations that you would have. I mean, we would get like really deep, really philosophical with a lot of that stuff. Don't
yep.
you agree?
Oh yeah, it was great. And then there's the occasional time where you're playing a song and you forget what the lyrics are. Like there was one time we had Rage Against the Machine absolutely cranked, and we're all in the middle of the village doing a mosh pit, and they get to the
Yep.
part where they're like, "F you, I won't do what you tell me," and we're all just sprinting to try to go shut it
Yep.
off. But it was like,
Yeah.
well, the cat's out of the bag. Although the kids knew worse than that, anyways. But it
Oh,
was,
for sure.
you know,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they did. And to tell you the truth, I learned so many different Spanish swears from from hanging out with those kids. And to this day, like I'll throw them out every once in a while. And like if I'm working with like a Spanish guy, I'd be like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Dude, I worked at camp with kids from Worcester. Come on, please."
just standing up on the porch and going, "Tu madre," and like six kids would turn around and flip you off.
Yep, exactly. That's funny. But yeah, all in all, camp great experience. I encourage like anyone if you can take the time to work at a children's camp because I mean I still have like some of these memories of some of the kids, um, and a lot of them come from broken homes, like bad places, and you have like you get these little moments of sunshine for them that kind of just like fills your soul.
Yep. And to bring it back to arbitrary road driving, my favorite activity at camp. Remember that when we would do the woods game
Hmm.
when I put the Australian like the Outback hat on,
Yeah.
and people
Yep.
would show up, and the other counselors would be like, "Oh no, we had to
Yeah.
just go
Exactly.
up in the woods," and I would draw the little map in the dirt, and I'd be
Hmm.
like, "You got to find the road. It's that way,"
Uh-huh.
and then they'd pick a leader, and
Yeah,
the best group that ever did that was a group of 6 to 10-year-old girls.
I believe you.
Took 15 minutes walking
Uh-huh.
a dead straight line right through the woods, found the road, and they were like, "We
Yep.
did it." And I was like, "Wow,
Yep.
you guys did a really good job." And then we had a group of, you know, 11 to 14-year-old boys that
Hmm.
got so far lost, even though they walked by that huge field that was over there, and it just went right past it. No one ever noticed that there was a field there. They were all arguing. We ended up 3 miles away from camp.
Oh yeah, there were a few times coming back, and it was like dusk, man. It was getting dark. It kind of got a little
Yeah,
scary, but
yeah. I think I was the one that really liked that game. Everyone else kind of
oh
just
yeah,
put up with
oh
me.
for sure. And sometimes when like I knew like you were in charge of whatever activity we had at that time, if I was really tired, I was like, Tim's gonna be all peppy, man. This is gonna be tough. I'm gonna have to dig down deep and try to figure this one out. But nice, very cool. Yeah, camp's awesome. I encourage everyone to go do it. Check it out. On top of that, other than that,
You're gonna get weird now.
let's get weird. Let's dive into a few things. First thing I want to talk to, and this has been scaring the living shit out of me for at least probably I don't know since a couple of years that it's been relevant. AI. How weird is AI, and what do you think of it?
AI is a little disconcerting. Like, there's a documentary film made years ago called Terminator that warned us all against giving those machines control.
I believe they did a
However,
follow up as well.
that being said, I think there is some usefulness to it.
There is.
If you have these menial tasks, like I have in the construction industry, I have superintendents that are out in the field that are working, and you need to send an email or something. If you have an AI type assistant, you could be like, hey, send so and so an email that's telling him we need 5 more guys there tomorrow, and it'll
Oh, really?
write this little paragraph, and you can proof. You got to proofread it, and then you send
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
you don't have to sit there on your phone just kind of like typing all this stuff out.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is nice. Little things like that for convenience are great.
Yeah.
But if you're relying on it for everything,
To run your government.
yeah.
Does that scare you? Because that scares me. Where
Yes.
people are like, eventually there's nothing we can do. AI is just going to take over and probably run the government. See, now, like, I kind of play devil's advocate with that in some way too, because like my whole thing with the government, where I'm always like, I don't trust the government. There's too much corruption. There's this, there's that. I don't believe any of them. The whole insider trading thing is disgusting. And but if you have AI running your government, there's none of that, because it's down a straight and narrow, right? Like, there would be no corruption. It would be absolute. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
The thing that concerns me about that sort of stuff, like if you have AI laying people off,
yeah,
right? Now you're having AI make all those decisions. You're the human, you're disconnected from that decision. To go back into my history, my history degree.
okay,
One of the big things in early warfare was people don't want to kill each other. It's not
no,
a thing you want to do. So, and because of the type of weapons they were using, in a lot of cases, when they first started using guns, the idea was now we're standing in lines firing at each other. And they did studies where, I think Napoleon did a study where you'd have guys fire at a 6-foot tall piece of paper. And these 100 soldiers would hit the paper at like a 90% success rate. In
really,
an actual battle with a 6
yeah,
foot tall line of people, the hit
yeah,
rate was about 20%.
really,
Yes, because it's more of an intimidate. You want them to just run away. You
yeah,
don't want to look at someone and kill them. It's
yeah,
not a
for
typical, it's
sure,
not a normal thing. So,
yeah,
and now we have warfare fought with drones. You
yeah,
play Call of Duty or something, and
yeah,
you're flying this drone. You can't see the people. You're not looking at them. They're just
yeah,
little glowing shapes. That
yeah,
disconnect allows you to unleash hell upon them
yeah,
without having to take the full burden of
yeah,
the impact of your actions.
for sure.
So when you have AI laying people off, you are not accepting the full responsibility and burden of being the one who's actually laying them off.
No, you're
You're
right.
distancing yourself.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's bad for everyone.
Oh,
It's
for
the
sure.
same way people are dicks to each other on the internet, and then if you
Yeah.
see them at a grocery store, they're fine.
Yeah, you would never say it to their face, but because
Right.
you're a keyboard warrior, you're like, hey, you're an asshole, and I'm going to tell you why you're an asshole. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. People never would say that in real life because you might
No.
get punched. And you
Yep.
also have to look at them and see the actual pain that it inflicts on them.
Yep.
Whereas if you can disconnect and have a computer separate yourself from them, you can say horrible
Exactly.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think it's a bad idea. And it's
Mhm.
using AI to send an email to someone is one thing. Using AI to make moral decisions for
Mm.
you because you don't have the guts to do it yourself and don't want to live with it yourself is a real problem.
Yeah. I personally, when I use AI, it's usually for like when I'm doing stuff for the podcast, I'll use it for like my show art. Um, like I found one, I forget, like, oh, I did Lower Canyon in the 60s. And basically what was going on in the Lower Canyon in the 60s, it has to do with this book right here. Weird Scenes in the Canyon. You ever read it?
I have not.
Dude, it's so good. I will let you borrow it. It's so good. So basically it's this guy wrote that book. First, he didn't really look into too much of that stuff. He was more into like he wrote books about like serial killers and stuff like that. But he did tie kind of serial killers into, you know, like government intelligence and how a lot of them kind of like fall into the same circles. And then his daughter was starting to talk about some stuff about Laurel Canyon while they're on vacation, and he looked into it. And the more he looked into it, he found out that like all these like really big names like, say, the Birds, the Doors, like all these like proponents of peace in the 60s. They all lived in Laurel Canyon, like all of them. Mamas and the Papas, the Birds, it's where the Charlie Manson murders happened. All happened in Laurel Canyon, and all of their parents all have military ties, like every single one of them. Not just like served in the military, like military intelligence. Like, and there's a part in Laurel Canyon where there's the Lookout Mountain, and Jared Leto actually bought that, and he lives there now, and he kind of has like a cult there. It's very weird, but it was it was used for like propaganda films that the government would make, and it was like leased out by the United States Air Force. Dude, like the whole thing is crazy. Like Jim Morrison's father was in charge of the Gulf of Tonkin that got us into the Vietnam War. Like he was the main admiral. Oh, yeah, dude, it's crazy. But this guy ties it all together, and it's very good. I forget why I started talking about Laurel Canyon, but I went off on a tangent for a while.
It happens.
Whoops. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, very interesting. I always think when it comes to like what you were talking about, like how now with war we have drones, and I always think because there's obviously a pilot for the drones, correct? There's someone that is doing it. Like I always try to think
they're working on that too. They're working on autonomous drones. That's
yeah.
the end goal, is to just have a bunch of autonomous drones flying above, and then you're further disconnected. And it all comes from the fact that you have these people making decisions to go to war that aren't going to be fighting in it.
No,
So
or
you're already fighting a proxy war between two leaders of countries with a bunch of people, so they don't have to see the faces of the people that they're getting killed.
Yeah.
And then now we're taking it so that even the people that are doing the fighting don't have to see the faces of what they're killing.
Yeah.
It's just trying to make it easier to kill each other without having the psychological effects that we know come with being involved in warfare.
Yeah.
And that's just where we're headed. I mean, you see like the robot dogs and stuff. Like,
oh my god, those scare the crap out of me.
You got those things. Like it's once you have that thing, might as well just put a gun on it and send it in.
Yep.
That's what they're working for.
And what they say about technology with robot dogs is that once those things come out, they are like 10 years into like some new technology that you have no idea. Like these robot dogs were like, oh wow, they have robot dogs now. Yeah, they've had those for a while. They're just releasing them now.
Yeah. If we find a planet with like blue humanoid creatures on it, I'm going to change my religion to James Cameron. I think he knows too much.
I think he does. I think he might be a time traveler. There is a lot of literature out there that say that James Cameron is in fact a time traveler. George Lucas too. If you go into like the Star Wars stuff, I was actually talking to my wife this morning about this, where like a lot of the Star Wars stuff kind of makes sense to like what is going on today, as far as like illegal immigrants and wanting to show visas and trade wars and the Senate and trying to become more powerful. And I don't know, you can definitely tie it into a lot of the stuff that's going on today. It's a little crazy that way. But I do remember why I was talking about Laurel Canyon. I talked about I use AI for my show art sometimes. And okay. I went into AI and I was like, show me CIA hippies or something like that. And I did. I found a few pictures. And the way that AI does it's kind of humorous to me. The way it was like a bunch of like hippies kind of like in on like a radio together. Like, well, it was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, probably for this show art, I think it might be a good idea to like ask what a Canadian and a Kenyan look like together and see where we would that not be cool? I would love to see what that looks like. Some burly Canadian and a skinny Kenyan, maybe holding their flags. I don't know. I'll see what I find. But yeah, AI scares the shit out of me. Now you did mention, finding different planets and stuff. How are you on aliens?
A little torn on aliens. I'm not self-centered enough to think that we're the only thing in the universe.
For sure. I'm not naive to think that it's just us.
I just don't. I don't know if they can. Well, I don't know if they would want to talk to us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I feel like if they had the technology to get here, they would also have the technology to not be detected by us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I tend to think that the earthbound sites of things that are unidentified might be what you're talking about, where the government's 10 years ahead of where everyone thinks they are technology wise.
Yeah.
But to think that I think just last week they came out with some planet that they confirmed would potentially be life sustaining. That's 114 light years away from here.
Yeah.
How they figure that stuff out is beyond me. But they've run their whatever tests they have to do, and they're like, well, this could be a potentially oxygen rich environment or a planet that could sustain life similar to what we have here.
Yeah.
And
you know what NASA stands for, right?
Heard a lot of different things that NASA stands
for. Not a straight answer.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're supposed to do, because if a scientist definitively says something, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because science, even when you have a proven fact, basically, it's still called a theory, because
for sure,
because science's job is to continually try to disprove that. And if you come up with a theory for until we stop all science in general, but the job of other scientists is to either disprove what you have or come up with something new and subject themselves to the criticism of it. So
for sure,
NASA can say what they think, but they'll also, I think, always acknowledge that there's something else out there that we don't really know about, nor can we confirm.
Yeah.
Until we have a USS Enterprise out there, shaking hands with aliens light years away, and which isn't going to happen until you have some way to do like the slipstream travel and stuff like that. Sci-fi stuff is really the only way you can cover the distances that are required. We can't get to the speed of light, and even if we got to the speed of light, you're still 1,000 years of travel to get to some of these places.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned shaking hands with aliens. Maybe they don't shake hands. Maybe it's feet.
Maybe maybe that's an absolute insult to them, and then we start some sort of
galactic war.
Independence Day comes from a miscommunication on proper greetings. They wanted a high five. We shook their hand. They destroyed the planet.
You've insulted me, sir. That's pretty funny. Now there is like a lot of different stuff where people are saying that you're always looking to the sky for aliens, but a lot of people are saying that it's actually
maybe they're underwater.
Yeah, they're coming from the water. Which
there's some videos of that with like the thing moving through the water, where there's no way something would move that fast through water, because it's not. There has to be some sort of a field around it, they theorize, in order to keep the water from actually touching that object, because otherwise the resistance of the water will prevent that speed from happening.
Exactly. And I'm kind of like on board with more interdimensional than galaxy wise. Like I feel they can cut holes in the space-time continuum and zip in and out where they need to.
Or the thought that if there's different dimensions, then they're already here and we're just coexisting without realizing it. You can go that way with it too, where it's kind of like one of those. What was that? Was that Nicole Kidman movie, The Others, where she thinks that she lives in a house, and it turns out that her and her family are ghosts? Spoiler alert on a 20-something-year-old movie.
If you haven't seen it yet, you're bad.
But she doesn't realize it, because she thinks the house is haunted, and it turns out they're haunting the house. And it could be stuff where we're seeing this, and it's they're just going about their day, we're going about our day, and occupying the same space but in different dimensions.
Oh, I like that. While we're at it, would you like to spoil The Sixth Sense for
anyone? Brad spoiled that for me when we saw it. Were you there for that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
I was like totally enraptured by that movie. And then he walked in the room. He's like, "Oh, I love this movie. I had no idea that he was dead." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
What? The worst. That's pretty funny. But yeah, like if you haven't seen it yet, that's on you. It's 20 plus years.
I think that one's 30.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like sometimes I forget how old I am. And not to like my number. Obviously, I know because it's very easy for someone that's born in 1980 because I'm like, oh, even numbers. If it's 2025, guess what? I'm turning 45 this year. It's very easy for me. So I know the number, but sometimes I forget that I'm still not in my 20s. And I suppose it's like some sort of like psychological deficiency. I have a buddy at work that I was talking to, and he's in like his like mid to probably mid to late 20s. And I can remember talking to him and talking about The Sopranos. And I was like, oh man, that show was good. It still holds up. He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah. I watched it. I thought it was great. And I was like, oh, because obviously I know he's in his 20s. So I was like, did you watch it when it first came out? He's like, well, I was 4, so I did not watch it. I was like, oh, that's right. I'm old and you're not.
Yeah.
Man, what happened?
I run into that too. I had a coworker that our running joke was every time I'd cite a movie, I had to then explain to her what the movie was and where she could find it and what library it might be in if they still had DVDs.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I do find I come across a lot of young people that because like I part-time job at Ocean State, I work with a lot of young kids and I find a lot of them like have never seen like classics like The Goonies or like a bunch of Adam Sandler movies, and like it just floors me. I was like, how have you lived this long without seeing like The Wedding Singer or Happy Gilmore? I
Yeah.
quote them constantly.
Yeah. Well, then, and that's what we grew up with and what we, well, that's why you marry someone that you can quote that stuff to and they get it. And
Exactly.
I've never understood those guys that like, they get to be 60 years old and they marry someone who's 20. What do you
Yeah,
talk about?
you have what do you even talk about? Or maybe you don't do any talking and you're fine with that, but yeah, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, just you got to have someone that's on the same wavelength with you as far as conversation, pop culture references.
For sure. Yeah. No, you're 100% right. You should probably write a book on marriage too, or relationships in general. Because you're right on. I mean, after that, it's like, just don't freak out when you have tough times.
Yeah, be a pretty short book.
Yep.
More of a pamphlet.
And did you ever watch what's it called? Ted Lasso.
Yeah, we were late to the party on that one. I'm like
Yeah.
I'm on season 2 now, I think.
Oh,
I love
really?
that show.
Oh yeah, so good. But there's one part where Roy is taking a cab and the guy driving the cab, he's like, oh, I'm going to see my wife. It's her anniversary. And as he gets out, he gives a bunch of money and he goes, here, that's her gift. And he's like, in the words of Nikki Sixx from the Motley Crue documentary, you got to date your wife. No statement has ever been truer. Take it from Nikki Sixx, Yeah.
Yep, it's true. And that show is the most wholesome show. Like, despite the language and stuff in it, it is the most feel-good show. Like it's like a warm hug. You can watch it when you're not feeling like anything.
Oh yeah.
Some shows like Last of Us, you can't watch it if you're kind of already having a bad day. But if you're having a really good day, you also don't want to watch it because
you have to be in the middle. You have to be numb to anything if you're going to watch that. But yeah, you're 100% right. Ted Lasso is amazing. We've rewatched it and we're actually like, and parents of the year here, we're watching it with our 13-year-old, but she knows not to say any of the bad words, yada yada yada. But I think that's what's great about that show is the excessive language that they use. It just brings it all together,
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Next, how about pyramids?
Such as like how they were built or
in
what the
general,
purpose was?
what at any point you want to talk about what pyramids are, why they're there, how they're there, who built them, whether you believe that slaves built them. This guy does not. But yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I believe, well, so I think slaves did build them. And the reason
Okay.
is because people can actually do some pretty cool things.
Hmm.
And you can do some really cool things if you have a bunch of free labor that you don't mind killing in the process.
True.
And and because I mean, you don't have to worry about safety regulations, none of that stuff. And I think it could be done. If you think about it, it makes sense. If you're trying to build something that's really tall and you try to
Hmm.
build it like we're building our buildings now, where they have these
Hmm.
big tall skyscrapers, that's
Sure.
not feasible then.
Mm.
But if you start wide and build your way up, you can go
Hmm.
pretty high with that. It's just a
Oh yeah.
matter of getting the blocks there. And
Hmm.
and there is a lot of precision. I think there's something lost to history about um, how much math people were able to do, and part of it is a Western skew on refusing to acknowledge that the Middle East was actually pretty advanced mathematically,
I think so. Sure.
and and there was a whole like crusade or something, maybe 10 of them,
Hmm.
and because of that, like there's a bias against acknowledging what they were capable of doing.
Mm.
Now, the other thing is the thing that I think where all the questions come from is, okay, now we've got these pyramids in Egypt. There's also pyramids in South America. Now, is that a case of people just kind of having the same thoughts about how to go about building something, or
Hmm.
is that a case of some other intervention guiding them to build that stuff? And
Mm.
there's questions too that come up in South America as far as these straight lines that go through mountains. They
Hmm.
dead straight line that is cut to a mountain and
Hmm.
then picks up exactly on the other side of that mountain.
Hmm.
And there's people that won't, you know they ponder how that would have happened. Now that being said, when they built that tunnel that goes from England to
Yep.
France,
Sure.
they were off by 8 feet when they met in the middle.
Really?
Yeah, they really screwed it up. They were drilling from both sides, and they screwed it up by 8 feet. And that's using, I mean, it was what early '90s, late
Yeah.
'80s, something like that.
Yeah.
Using pretty modern technology, they were that far off. There's a tunnel in the Berkshires, and it is a 5 mile long tunnel that goes through a mountain. When they built that one, they were only off by about 8 inches,
Really?
and that's with using guys sighting things from opposite mountains and doing stuff like that.
Sure.
There's ways. I think sometimes we get lazy with our new technology and
Yeah.
refuse to acknowledge that people probably could have pulled that off.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think of how they would have done that.
Yeah.
What are the steps? We're looking at how we build stuff now. It takes forever to build things, but
Yeah.
there's nothing else they're doing. Like if you
No.
have an army of people that whose entire job is to build this, and you have unlimited time to do that, you can probably pull off a lot of pretty impressive things. We just need everything now. So that I think it's fun. It's fun to think of, like, some sort of divine inspiration, or some higher power telling them how to go about this stuff, but it's still got
Hmm.
to get done. It still
Yeah.
has to happen, and you need that labor to do it.
Yeah.
I,
No, it's a good
so
point.
I have a hard time looking at things in just one way. It's
No,
like,
and that's probably a good way to look at things in general. Like, when you've got tunnel vision and you're like, oh, this is how they did it. This is why this it's have you got into like any of the ancient apocalypse on Netflix with Graham Hancock?
I've seen some of that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, where
yeah. The fact
he
that there was like a society, 20,000 years ago, and
yeah.
they dabble into Atlantis and stuff like that too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
Yeah.
think he feels that like I want to say, I don't probably butchering it, but every 80,000 years, the Earth goes through an apocalypse of some sort and wipes all of mankind out, and then they, well, obviously can't wipe all of mankind out. Some people do survive, and then they have to repopulate it and start again. But if you look at some of and maybe it's not the pyramids in Egypt, but some of the other structures where they can tell that there is like areas where there were like living quarters where people knew this apocalypse was coming, and they stored as much as they could, and they went down into this section. Um, that I don't know. I'm kind of on board with that because what is kind of like along with what you're saying, where these people had the technology to do some of this stuff, but for some reason it got lost. It probably got wiped out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also like the idea of a collective conscious, where
Yep.
if say one of those, say that theory was correct and that
Yep.
society reset after 80,000 years, the survivors have that kind of built-in knowledge, whether they realize it or not, and they can pass it down. I like
Hmm.
the idea of that, where when you get into when you talk about religions and the differences in
Hmm.
religions, they all still kind of believe the same thing, that humans are controlled by a higher power,
Exactly.
and somehow collectively, no matter where geographically these societies developed,
Hmm.
they found themselves worshiping in either similar or at least conceptually the same way, even
Yeah.
though they have no contact with each other. The
Yeah.
tribes of South America had no contact with the Middle Eastern Egyptians and
Yeah.
any of those societies,
Hmm.
but they still built pyramids. They still worshipped something in the sky,
Sun
and
gods.
yeah, no, without the sun, we'd all be in big trouble.
For sure. If you're gonna worship anything, I think that's the one.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yep.
Um, yeah, no, I do find that very, very interesting. And I also am on board, and this might kind of segue into my next topic I kind of wanted to go in. I want to go into like a little, you mentioned religion, a little religion. I don't want to go like deep religion, but religion light is what I like to call it. And it's not important to me if you subscribe to a religion or anything like that, but kind of like what you said, they all have the same base. And how many I think more people have died in the name of God than all of our world wars put together. If you look at the Crusades and you look at all, people like our religion's better or this religion's better, but they all have the same kind of belief status. I mean, let's take a Catholic religion with you have God, Jesus, Mary, your three archetypes, and then look at Norse mythology where you have Odin, the father, Thor,
Yeah,
the son, and then you have Hera, maybe Hera. Does that sound right? Athena, Hera.
I think she's more
Whatever.
involved in that. I have to
Yeah.
rewatch Percy Jackson.
Right, but yeah, Greek mythology, kind of the same thing with Zeus and
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So it's kind of like they all have the same base, and I think there's just like there is a higher power, and there is but all the stories kind of get muddied up by, let's say, man in general. I do have like some of my issues with the Bible. I was always brought up Roman Catholic, altar boy, went to Catholic school for years. So like I'm kind of well versed in a lot of the stories of the Bible. Whether or not I 100% believe a lot of it, I mean, I believe the core stuff, God, Jesus. I think where a lot of people are like, oh, Jesus never exists. There's way too much evidence to show us, the what is it, the Shroud of Turin and Spear of Destiny, like all that sort of stuff. I do believe that stuff actually happened, but I do. Once again, I believe a lot of it was muddied by men and excuse me, and um, the role of women, I believe, have been like kind of like brought down. I kind of believe that, especially when it comes to Jesus, like the whole Mary Magdalene, I think she had a bigger stake in the game than we're actually believing. Like, because the Bible just tells us, oh, that's just like a prostitute that hung out with him and followed him around. But I kind of feel like there's more to it. Any thoughts?
well, part of the problem is that and with all religions, it's only in relatively recent history that everything's written down.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
There's
a
word of mouth
multi
before that,
it's a
right?
multi-thousand-year game of telephone on these stories,
Right. No,
and
the
you
fish is this
also
big.
and you also have. I mean, I know when I write stuff down, Sometimes I mix up letters or I spell something wrong.
Yep.
And then if someone then reads that and then transcribes that, they could make a mistake.
Yep.
And there's no copy and paste until only the last 50 years.
Sure.
And even then it was pretty rudimentary.
Yep.
So I think, and again, it's like everything else in history, the victors tell the story of what goes on. So
Yeah.
when it comes to like women's role, who knows? The women could have had a much bigger role in most of these Bible stories, but
Yeah.
the men that are telling it and the men that are standing on a pulpit that are preaching this are going to minimize that, or not. They might not, but
Maybe
it gets filtered over time, and it reflects the society that it's in. And then at some point, it was written down, and once that's written down, even then, if you read different versions of the Bible, the just the language used is different. I mean, if you go to Google Translate and you write a sentence and then translate it to Hebrew and then translate it back, and it loses context. So there's the discrepancies in just an oral history in general, and then there's the discrepancies in the translators of various texts over the years. I think it's the Bible, but it's also subject to the authors of the Bible, and I think more and more people, really narrow their view of that and don't want to open up to other ideas. And I think that causes some problems. If you're a literalist, then you are doing it. You're basing your life around a literal interpretation of a book that is in large part allegory and in large part stories and parables that are being told, where you're supposed to extrapolate a lesson, not literally believe that thing happened.
Yeah, no, I
and
100%
that was
agree with
Jesus
that.
himself. Jesus himself did all of his teaching in parables.
Yep.
Because that's how people could understand the message he was trying to get across.
Yeah.
If you take that literally, then I think you're missing the point.
Yep. No, that's a good point. There was one thing. You mentioned the thing about the victors. Norm Macdonald has a great quote where he goes, "Hey, you ever notice in the history books, the good guys always win?"
True.
Yeah. That guy was so far beyond his years. And so was George Carlin, too. That guy had his pulse on everything that's going on, even today, man. He was way ahead of his time. And rest in peace to both of them. All right, man. That's pretty much all I really kind of wanted to dive into today. Congratulations. This is the longest podcast I've ever done.
You got to keep them under an hour.
we are. We're 3 minutes in. So if there's anything that you want to talk about, now's the time. You have 3 minutes, sir.
No, I think we've covered it. We can always come back and talk about more weird stuff.
Yeah. So, but as I was saying before we started, I think if this is something that you'd be willing to do, I mean, even kind of like a separate podcast, we could call it Canadians and Kenyans. I think that might be kind of cool. But we'll brainstorm it. We'll think about it. So
I'm down for it. Let's see what the audience response is first. If your 5 listeners like it, maybe we can give them a little more.
Exactly. Well, see, 5 on YouTube. My last one. I think I had probably a few on Spotify too. I get the most on Rumble, and I believe because I cheat a little bit, not trying to cheat, but so Rumble asks you to put two topics in, and it has a drop down menu. And so the first one I put entertainment because it isn't entertainment. The second one I would like to put conspiracy, but there's no place to put conspiracy. All it gives me is like video games or like how-to videos. So I always I don't know, I pick like BioShock 2. So I guarantee there's like a bunch of young kids looking for walkthroughs for BioShock 2.
If you want to do a BioShock 2 podcast, I can help you out with that.
Oh, really? I've never played it, but yeah.
Game's amazing. I love that game.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. So I think
so. All right, now we said it, so it could be one of the topics here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so BioShock 2 will work because it has been said. So I'm not lying this time. But every other time, I guarantee there's young kids that are like, I had no idea Marilyn Monroe was killed by the mob. Sweet Jesus. So I'm hitting different avenues by lying. But other than that, let's wrap it up. Tim, thank you for being my first guest, man. It's been incredibly awesome. I had a great time, and I hope we get to do it again.
All right, Dave, it's an honor to be here. Good luck, man. I'll talk to
Thanks
you
so
soon.
much. All right, see you, bud. Bye.
See you.